I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Week 18, final week of the regular season predictions. But before we jump into those games, just a quick update on Cal and I's head-to-head pick'em going into that final week. We had both half-decent weeks last week. I didn't do great, but Callan did okay. Callan dropped 11 points. I only dropped 9. But since he was only down by 2 to begin with, we are now tied going into Week 18. So pretty ironic that we are in the same situation before Week 18 that we were in before Week 1, but kind of poetic how it ended that way. So final scores has us knotted up at 164, and it all comes down to this final week. 16 more games to win the regular season.
Yep, hopefully we don't end up in a tie, but we'll crown a regular season champ. But it's been quite a comeback for me all season. I've been kind of behind and got just enough points with that Packers double point, which was huge for me last week.
That was big, yep. And then the Bills and Bengals game being canceled really shook it up because we also had it different there. But nevertheless, we ended up tied going into Week 18 now, so should make these picks very, very fun at the very least. So as for those predictions, we're going to start off with one of the 2 Saturday games that are happening this week. Since it's the final week, there is no Thursday night or Monday night football game. We have 2 Saturday games, and then the rest of the slate will be played on Sunday. So lots and lots of games to watch this Sunday. Should be fun there. Starting off with one of the Saturday games, we have the Tennessee Titans heading to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars for the AFC South division title, and we agree here. We both have the Jags in this one.
Yeah, the Titans are just too beat up. They're starting Josh Dobbs again at quarterback, which no shade on Josh Dobbs, but I mean that's your 4th-string quarterback basically. They had to sign him off a practice squad. He's only been there for a few weeks. It's going to be a tough situation for the Titans to win. And one thing is that even if the Titans do win, the Jags are not completely eliminated. They can still win that 7th seed if they lose. And then the Bills beat the Patriots, and the Jets beat the Dolphins, and the Steelers lose to the Browns. If all 4 of those things happen, then the Jaguars sneak in as that 7th seed.
Interesting. So we'd have the Titans and the Jags in there out of
a chance.
Out of a not very good AFC South. It'd be pretty ironic if that was one of the divisions that we're lucky enough to get 2 teams in.
Yeah.
But just looking at these 2 teams, it's really a bummer because the Titans probably are a playoff team if they're at 100%, if they're fully healthy. But if you just look at all the injury bugs they've had, and it sucks to say this because it's so bad to miss the playoffs just because of injury bugs, but the Jaguars just deserve to be in the playoffs more. They have a better chance to actually make some sort of a run, even with all the younger players they have. So that's mostly why I have the Jags in this one. As Colin mentioned, Titans were just too beat up to pick them, and I just want to see the Jaguars in the playoffs more, to be dead honest. So next up, we're moving down to our game of the week, starting with the Sunday games, with the New England Patriots heading to Buffalo to take on the Bills. And we again agree, we both have the Bills in this one.
Yeah, I think that the Bills are going to win it. They're coming off basically a mini bye by the postponement of last Monday's game. So they got almost a good 2-week rest for this game. And I just think that the Bills are just more talented than the Patriots, even though the Patriots are fighting for that 7th seed. Unless the Patriots defense is able to step up, which is not completely ruled out with their touchdown streak right now. But I believe that the Bills will be able to overcome that Patriots defense and get the victory here and help their cause for the number 1 overall seed in the AFC.
Yep. Even since the Bills have gotten their uprising and they have been this powerhouse of a team that they've been for the past couple of years, the Patriots do always put up a really good game against Buffalo. To be honest, if this was in New England, I think I might pick the Patriots, even though I think the Bills did beat the Patriots in New England earlier. But there's just so much on the line here, and Belichick is so used to these big games like this. But there's just a little too much stacked against New England, so I have the Bills in this one. But I would not be overly surprised if the Patriots were able to kind of pull the upset and get themselves in the playoffs.
Can't rule out Belichick.
You definitely cannot, especially when it comes to December and playoff football. Definitely. Next up, jumping down just a little bit, we got the Minnesota Vikings heading to Chicago to take on the Bears, and we agree again, we both have the Vikings.
Yeah, and this is actually a more important game for the Bears, really, because if the Bears lose this game and the Houston Texans win their game, the Bears get the number 1 overall pick, where they will go and draft a quarterback, I'm sure of it. But
why wouldn't they?
But so that this could be a very huge game for the Bears in terms of their draft position. And then the Vikings are still fighting for that number 1 seed, number 2. They could be as low as the 3 seed. They won't be as low as the 4. That's locked up by the Tampa Bay Bucks. But they
that barely over 500 record.
Yeah. So they can't fall that far, but it's still possible that the Vikings get that number 1 overall seed and get the bye for the playoffs this week.
I'm not positive, but with the loss to the Packers last week, I don't think the 1 seed is possible.
Oh, really?
But the 2 seed is still possible with a Vikings win and a 49ers loss, which it's pretty likely that the Vikings and the 49ers are going to see each other again in that round 2. So home field advantage right there between the 2 and 3 seed is a really big deal.
Difference.
So this is still a pretty big game. It's not the end of the world, but it would be awesome if the Vikings could pick up a win here. And man, it'd be really awesome if the Cardinals could upset the 49ers, but I don't like the odds on that one. But the Vikings just got a lot of talent on the Bears. I think after that awful week against the Packers last week, they're more than anything just going to kind of want to reprove themselves and beat up on a lower level team. So the Bears do have a really good track record of winning in Chicago when we face that week 18. But I think that the Vikings are just going to be pissed and are going to be throwing haymakers in Chicago.
Yeah, well, like I said earlier this year, there's nothing like a game against the Bears to get back on track.
It really is true.
Maybe it's the right time for the Vikings.
It's a get-right game, to say the least. But if we get any sort of a lead, just pull the starters, because we've had enough injuries the past few weeks. We don't need more going into the playoffs.
Especially
now.
On that offensive line.
Yeah, our offensive line is beat to shit. But luckily, the Bears have pretty much a non-existent defensive line, so that certainly helps. So now jumping down the list quite a bit, we're going to go down to an NFC East matchup with the New York Giants heading to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. And the one of few splits we have this week, I have the Giants in this one, and Callan has the Eagles.
Well, I think the Eagles want that number 1 seed. They've had it for most of the season. It would be quite a shame for them to lose it now, and they could even lose out on the division if the Cowboys win. But the Giants are sitting at a stalemate. They're locked into that 6th overall seed. They can't go any higher or any lower, so it's kind of a meaningless game for the Giants, which makes me think that it'll be a walk in the park for the Eagles.
Yeah, 2 big things to look at, one for each team here. I'm interested to see who plays quarterback for the Eagles, because now the Eagles are in a situation where not only might they lose the 1 seed, they might lose the division. So do they throw Hurts in there while he's still shaky with his injury, or do they roll with Minshew again, who just lost to the Saints last week on a pick 6 to relatively end the game pretty much? So it's going to be really fun to watch that quarterback decision there, and it's going to be fun to see which starters the Giants plays, because as Callan mentioned, they're already locked in at that 6th seed. So other than the fact that it's a divisional game against a really good opponent, an opponent that they might see in the playoffs again, there's not really much going on for the Giants this game, whether they win or lose. So it'll be interesting to see if they play guys like Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, or how far into the game they let those guys play. But I think that the Giants are going to want to beat the Eagles so badly just because the Eagles have beat up on them so much recently. The Eagles are this big powerhouse. Everyone's saying they're Super Bowl favorites. They're going to be the number 1 seed. The Giants want to say, hey, we got this new team. We're not the old Giants. We have Brian Daboll now. We have Saquon Barkley returning back to form. We want this game. So I think they're going to come with a lot of fire and a lot of passion, and the Eagles are going to be almost the dead opposite. So I got the Giants in this one, but it's going to be a fun game to watch nevertheless. So now to round it out here, we got a huge game in the NFC North with the Detroit Lions heading to Green Bay to take on the Packers, and yet another split here. I have the Lions and Callan has the Packers.
Yeah, this game will pretty much be for the 7th seed. If the Seahawks were to win against the Rams earlier in the day, and then it would be for the Packers to win in their end, and then if the Lions win, then the Seahawks are in, but only if the Seahawks win earlier in the day, which I don't think is going to happen. I think the NFL wants the Sunday night game to be for that 7th overall seed, and they're going to do everything they can to get the Rams that win over the Seahawks. So there's no controversy. Hey, it's an entertainment business. They're allowed to script.
There's been a few times throughout history that I've been like, man, that might have been scripted. So who knows?
It definitely seems like it sometimes, but I like the Packers in this one. They're at home. They're on a roll. Aaron Rodgers has had a resurgence to this late season. We've really found the running game with Aaron Jones going over 100 yards last week, which was the first time all season the Vikings had allowed a 100-yard rusher, I believe.
Pretty close to it, yeah, only first or second. Yeah.
So the show that just shows that the running game is getting back on track. A.J. Dillon is coming into his own, his late season form, which seems to really turn on late in the season. He didn't do so hot in the start of the year, but he's now, since week 10, leads the NFL in rushing touchdowns. So that's a pretty good number to build on. And really, the way that we've gotten on this streak is that our defense has just turned it up to an unbelievable level. They have 12 turnovers in the last 5 games when they've had 12 in their first or prior games to the season. So the fact that we're becoming a turnover-prone defense and our special teams is really sharpening them up, especially with our return unit now being a weapon, that's just more fuel for Aaron Rodgers' fire. And let me tell you, like I said earlier, or in last episode, when Rodgers can get a defensive and or a special teams touchdown, that should be a win 10 times out of 10.
Old Rodgers, I agree.
Oh,
like prior Rodgers, I think that's a very true statement.
We have old Rodgers.
The new Rodgers, yeah, I guess technically old Rodgers being the new Rodgers. Today's Rodgers, what we'll call it. We'll call it past and present Rodgers. But present Rodgers, I don't know how true that is, but the Packers have just killed the Lions in heartbreaking ways so many times. So many different Hail Marys, taking them out of the playoffs, all that different stuff. But the Lions have Dan Campbell now. They have a team that can actually kind of play for the first time in a while. They're going to want blood, and they're going to want green blood spilled all over that field in Lambeau. I think that the Lions are going to come out with a fire lit under their ass like we've never seen before from Detroit. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a slobber knocker, to say the least. And it's going to be one of two ways. It's either going to be a shootout where it's going to be like a 40-45 game, or it's going to be one of those awful like 7-10, 7-3 type games.
Oh, man.
But nevertheless, I think this is going to be a really close Sunday night football game. But I do think the Lions are going to come out on top. And then it's just going to come down to if the Seahawks are able to win earlier, whether it's the Lions or Seahawks in the playoffs. So it should be a fun one to watch, to say the least. I think it definitely earned that primetime Sunday night football spot. So that was our NFL Week 18 predictions. Thank you all so much for watching. And don't forget to leave a like if you like the video. But until next time, don't forget
to eat the W.